Well, I'm super excited to have a guest on, Raphael Collazo. Did I say that right?
Collazo. Yep.
Collazo. Well, thanks so much for joining me on this call. Raphael's a real commercial real estate agent in Louisville, Kentucky, and even more exciting that I'm looking forward to chatting with him on this call is the social media and brand that he's been able to build in the commercial real estate industry. So we'll jump into that, but first, welcome, Raphael. Thanks again for joining me on the call.
Thanks, Chad. Always great to join you on all these different events. So
Yeah,
great to
so
see you.
I've been very impressed with what you've accomplished in a relatively short period of time because you've been in the business for about a year and a half. I know you had a software background before, but in a year and a half, you've really built up a large commercial real estate presence on the internet. You've done a number of things with YouTube channels. You've live streamed interviews. You've put out a number of awesome segments as well. Now I see you're getting into podcasting. You've written a handful of books. You have another one on the way. I'd really like to explore your journey to how you got into commercial real estate, and then how you decided to incorporate all these different mediums into building that online brand that you've done.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm an open book, so ask away.
So the one thing I've always been fascinated about with the commercial real estate industry is it always seems to lag behind, call it residential real estate or other more tech savvy industries. I think commercial real estate is almost like similar to like lawyers or accountants or bankers, where they're very reluctant to dip their toe in that water. But how you and I met was on YouTube, and I know you've started building out a really good channel, and we've talked about this before. It's all about value add content. But what was your experience getting into YouTube? What attracted that to you, and what was your game plan to go into it?
Sure. So I actually got into YouTube a few years ago, and it was unrelated to commercial real estate. I started a channel called The Millennial Moment, and that was related to the books that I had written prior, which was the Millennial Playbook series. And we talked about personal and professional development topics for young professionals. And as you know, when you film, it's a completely different medium. You could be standing in front of a group of 50 people, and I've gotten a lot better doing that through Toastmasters. And I know you're also involved in Toastmasters, and that helped me immensely when it came to speaking in front of people. But when you're staring in front of a camera and you don't have any audience engagement, it's a completely different story. And so I remember when I first started my YouTube channel, it was very awkward and very difficult to churn out videos. And it took me hours sometimes to be able to record a single video because I'd mess up and then try again, mess up, then try again. And I thought I'd have to do everything in one take. So over time, I was able to refine a little bit on how I approached the YouTube channel. I was able to churn out some video content. And so when I decided to move away from that medium, I did see some results from it. And so when I got into commercial real estate, and especially here in Louisville, Kentucky, there's not a lot of people doing YouTube here. And really overall, there's not a lot of YouTube players in the commercial real estate space. And so I thought it was one of those mediums that, you could benefit from just throwing yourself out there, because like you said, people gather information in various different ways. They go to Google. YouTube's the second largest search engine on the planet. So you imagine if you have a question, in particular, if it's a how-to question or whatever else, one of the first places I go to is YouTube. So I thought, this is a good opportunity for me to just to dip my toe in the water and become a presence on this platform. And so far I've been able to, similar to you, we've been able to get some pretty solid engagement on some of the videos, and the subscribership is growing, and hopefully it's provided some value to people. So
The one thing that I've noticed with commercial real estate, and you touched on that as well, is that the channels that are on YouTube tend to just go and pitch a listing. So it'll be a quick video walkthrough of a new industrial or office property that they have, and it's very quick. There's a minute of walking through the building, and that's it. And that's really just a commercial. That's what those people are using YouTube for. And if they're looking to get a little bit more of exposure, then there's nothing wrong with that. But they also can't be surprised if that video doesn't get more than a dozen views or so, just because it really is targeting someone that is specifically looking for that type of property, versus some of the content that I've watched of yours. It's all value add. You're the one that I saw today on functional obsolescence. You're adding real value as opposed to just pitching a commercial. And the one thing that I really applaud you for is that you're actually doing live streams on those. So we did an interview together, and that was on YouTube live stream, and you also did it on Facebook. So what's been your experience with doing those live streams and integrating the two of those together?
So yeah, I mean, the great thing about this medium is that you can conduct a live stream and then repurpose the content you recorded into other different mediums, right? So I've been doing live streams for quite some time. I actually started a few meetups in town right when I started getting into my commercial real estate career. One was an investor meetup group, and then I also started a commercial real estate 101 group, which is you were actually a guest speaker on, which really thank you for that opportunity to be on the show, and as well Louisville Business Summit, which is another meetup that talks about topics related to business that are relevant to business owners. Um, I would say with the virtual streams, it allows us to be able to get in front of people live, so people can come in from all across the country, tune in, and then consume the content that way. Through Zoom, you're able to capture, you know, email and addresses or whatever else, and so that becomes part of the rotation of sending out the content via email and whatever else. And again, through this time when where a lot of people aren't going and engaging in meetups, it provides a sense of connection. So again, people do business with people they trust. If they see you on a platform, they engage with you on a platform, even though it isn't physically in front of us. Again, we've never physically met before, but we've talked through Zoom, we've engaged with each other on different platforms, and I feel like I know you more so than I would if we had just been exchanging emails back and forth. So
Mhm.
again, it's all about building that trust, different touch points, and things can happen through those over time.
So I want to explore that a little bit further because you bring up a really good point. So if we could establish that giving value added content is key from the content standpoint, there also needs to be a process that it works in tandem with that content to distribute it, to make sure that people are actually seeing it. So what are some of the processes that you've adopted to piggyback on that content that you're creating, but also making sure it's reaching people?
Sure. So, as you know, I mean, we do record these videos. So, number one, subscribers. Every time you post a video on YouTube, if they click the notification bell, they get notified of videos that get published on the platform. Therefore, that's a touch point. They go
Mhm.
see the video, whatever else. If you're interested in seeing the stream live, I post the event on Meetup, on LinkedIn, and you're able to build followings on those platforms. On Meetup.com, for example, for the Louisville Real Estate Investor Meetup Group, we have 917 members that we've been able to accumulate over the last year and a half. The Commercial Real Estate 101 Meetup has 170 members. On the LinkedIn platform, I created a LinkedIn group that is specifically for the Commercial Real Estate 101. We have 180 followers almost now, and that's continually growing every single day. You create events on LinkedIn, you invite all your connections that you think would gain value from that particular event, and now people register for the event. In order to register for the event, they have to provide you with an email. Once you get the email from them, you create email campaigns, and that's what I do. Is I send reminders out to people the day of the event saying, hey, we have an event today, if you're interested in stopping by, click the link to register. And then people register, and then the new emails I add to the email list, and then I send out the actual video. Once it's done, I send it out to the group the next day saying, hey, in case you missed the event, here's the video. And we always get a certain amount of clicks from people just going into the YouTube channel and watching the video or whatever else. And through that, I mean, I've had people reach out to me and saying, thanks again for sending me that video. That was super helpful. I wasn't able to make it to this event, obviously, for some whatever reason, but I do really appreciate you sending that out. So again, it's systematizing things, right? And I've been able to get it down to a point where I know exactly where I'm going to post all the different events, primarily Eventbrite, Meetup.com, LinkedIn, and even Bigger Pockets, which is the largest investor platform out there. And so each time that I lock in a speaker, you create events on all those platforms, and then invite people to it, and then continually follow up with them until they actually attend the event. And so I think with your event, we had almost 45 people that showed up, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that range, 40 or so.
Yeah, and interestingly, there's another agent even in my market that joined in on that call. So what I find fascinating about what you're creating is you're obviously focused on your market, but you're casting this super wide net all over North America and presumably even the world. I'm guessing there's people that tune into your content just because you're so focused on giving that value to on commercial real estate, and there's an absence online for people talking about this stuff. So I find it fascinating to watch as your trajectory continues to cast that super wide net. I think it's awesome what you're doing, and I think people could probably appreciate that you're going 60 miles an hour doing this. Like, you've ramped up so many different things already, and that might seem a bit overwhelming to people that want to start dipping their toe into it. So what would you say to someone that can't get up to your speed quickly, but wants to start getting into developing a community, developing an online brand? What would you say to someone that's just starting?
So what I would say is start a meetup. That's how it all started for me. Physically meeting people on in a location, whether that's grabbing coffee or whatever else. We what we did is at the end of every month we would have people come to a bar. We just kind of hang out and talk and whatever else. And then once you've established some notoriety through the meetup, then incorporate an online component. Maybe what you do is say, okay, at the end of the month we'll have the physical meetup, and then in the middle of the month we'll have, a guest speaker that we'll invite from somewhere else. And then we'll do it all virtually, especially now with people being so comfortable with the virtual in a virtual setting. I
Mhm.
feel like it's going to be a lot easier of a sell to be able to say, yeah, just pop in for this meetup. It should be great. And then you do something similar to what we're doing, where, we do the live stream, you have the people register, and then you can send out the content that way. Um, that's very easy because all you have to do is commit 1 hour to it. You have to find the speaker, which is, couple emails sent out, and try to coordinate dates and times, and then physically show up to the event and come with 10 or so questions, then have a Q&A at the end. It doesn't require significant time investment. And then as far as other things are concerned, I do an FAQ series where I just answer questions in front of a camera. Now, if this is the first time you're doing YouTube, similar to what I said before, it's awkward being in front of the camera at first. You're going to have to work through just kind of squirming in your seat a little bit as you're talking, and you hear yourself on the recording. You're like, ugh, that sounds weird. But over time, you start getting a lot better at it. And what I do is I just use this, I use a tripod, put
Mhm.
my phone there, and then I act like I'm sitting in front of a client. And I say, okay, if someone were to ask me, what is functional obsolescence? I just sit there and say, okay, let me explain it to you as if you're sitting right in front of me. And that only takes me, 6 or 7 minutes or however long the video is to be able to answer that question. And I'm not super diligent about, chopping everything up and saying, okay, this has to be perfect. And I mean, you can kind of tell in some of my videos that I'm saying, or whatever, but at the end of the day, the message gets across. And, the great thing about YouTube is just, you need to get it out there,
Mhm.
get it in front of people. And then over time, you'll become a lot more comfortable doing it. And then you'll look back a year later and say, wow, look how far I've come. And you know this through Toastmasters. I mean, when I first got in front of people, I was terrible. I was petrified, I was shaking and whatever else. And now I feel very comfortable in front of a large audience. But that took, 3 or 4 years of being in the organization and engaging with the group on a regular basis in order for me to get to that point. So really it's about getting started. And it doesn't take a significant amount of time. It just takes consistent action.
So what do you estimate that you spend time wise on all the different systems and platforms you've built out?
Uh, so again, I think the most effort is put on the front end. So when you find a speaker, you have to create the events. So I go to Eventbrite, create an event. That probably takes me 10 or 15 minutes. And then I copy the description from Eventbrite and post it on Meetup. That probably takes me another few minutes. Then I go to LinkedIn and I create the event on LinkedIn. And so I post the description on there and the link or whatever. That probably takes me another 10 or 15 minutes. And then again, Facebook and whatever other medium. So that altogether, it maybe takes me 30 minutes to an hour.
Mhm.
On the day of the event, I show up, I ask 10 or so questions, and maybe it takes me 10 or 15 minutes to come up with the questions I want to ask, and then run the meeting and then run the Q&A. That probably takes me another, hour. And then when I edit the videos, I don't chop up and edit it mainly. I chop off the beginning if, we have banter in the middle.
Mhm.
But I just chop off the beginning, plug in my subscribe links and whatever else, and then post it on YouTube with a description. That probably another maybe an hour. So let's call it 3 or 4 hours on the meetup side, and then with the videos, like the handheld videos, maybe 15 to 30 minutes max. So you're talking 4 to 5 hours a month, just by creating content, is what I would say. I would estimate
Yeah.
goes into the production and the distribution of it. So
And what's insightful about that is that's with you doing all those different mediums and inputs into it. That people might overestimate how much time is actually required to do all these. When in reality, if you just start with one thing, and I love the idea about doing meetups, because I suspect in most markets there's an appetite to have a commercial real estate meetup, but there's no supply. So there's demand but no supply. So I agree. I think if someone wanted to take one step, that's something they could do to offer the market something that isn't there, but there's surely a demand, and you've proven that. But it doesn't necessarily need to be a part-time job or something that requires a considerable amount of time and effort. It's just you have to put time in. You have to have a passion for it. You have to have a desire to want to do it. But it's not a job. It's something that you'd probably do regardless, just because you enjoy it. So I would piggyback on that and say it's not an overwhelming amount of labor that has to go into it, but it does offer you the ability to get in front of a whole bunch of other people that you wouldn't otherwise been doing. So yeah, that's really really good on that. I know that you've also started converting some of that into your content into podcasts as well. Was that just a natural extension that you already had some recorded content to transition into it?
yeah, so similar to, I mean, the live streams are essentially a podcast if you really think about it. I mean, really, it's you asking questions to a speaker, and at the end there's a Q&A or whatever else. So I thought, well, we already have the video. Why not create a podcast that is essentially the live streams? So that's what we did. We created the Commercial Real Estate 101 podcast, and every time that we produce a video, I convert it to an MP3 format, and then also post it as a podcast. Uh, Obviously we haven't, I mean, I checked the stats the other day, and we have like 60 listens since we started, and that was a few weeks ago. I mean, obviously it's not a significant amount of traffic, but again, over time the algorithm works, right? It's just constant touch points. And then another thing that I'll mention too is, if maybe you're hesitant about, you know, doing all this video and stuff, maybe just do the meetup, but then have someone film you when you're interviewing a speaker, because then again, it's like you're already there. Why not kill two birds with one stone and actually get the video content as well? And at that point, you wear a mic, you interview the other person, and then after that, you can even send it off to someone else and on Fiverr, for example, and pay them, I don't know, 15 or 20 bucks or whatever to give you a video, and you upload on YouTube. So there's different ways to do it.
When you first started doing the meetups, did you have like a lot of support for it, or did it start off pretty meager and then you had to build it up?
Oh yeah, I think the first meetup we had 13 or 14 people. And
Yep.
that was with help. Like I was like pulling people to try to get them in there, and that was our Louisville real estate investor meetup group. But again, we all came there, we all hung out. We kind of pitched what the group was about. That's another thing. Get your mission straight. Like, what exactly are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And every time that you meet, reinforce that. Like, tell people this is why. This is why. You know this with Toastmasters. Every time we go through a Toastmasters meeting, and for those of you guys who don't know what Toastmasters is, it's a leadership organization that teaches you public speaking skills and leadership ability. But every time you go through a meeting, we say exactly what each portion of the meeting is about and why we do it, because people need that constant reinforcement to know, oh, okay, I get it. I know why, right? So then they'll tell people about it and say, oh yeah, by the way, you should come out, check out this, meetup. This is what we do. This is why we're doing it. So people need a goal. People need a mission. People need structure. So over time, we started growing the group, and before the pandemic pretty much shut us down, we had almost 100 people showing up on a monthly basis. And that was for more so on the residential investor side. But then again, the commercial real estate side, the same thing applies, because if you get people to show up on a regular basis, and you get clear on what your mission is, and you provide structure and value in each and every time, it just grows from there. So
That's a huge success story to grow it from 13 to 100. That's awesome. And I
yeah.
think that really speaks to kind of everything that we've been talking about is have a good message, add some value to it, create a community where people want to belong and want to participate, and simultaneously grow your personal brand and provide all those touch points without having to sell. You're there, you're adding value, you're engaged in the conversation. You don't actually have to sell any of these people. They all know who you are. They all know what you do, just as a result of you putting in that time and energy to build that online brand. And on that topic as well, so you've written 4 books, Millennial Playbook books, and you've also got a new one before you sign the commercial lease, a book coming out end of March here, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like April timeframe. So yeah.
I pre-ordered it, so I'm excited to
Nice.
to get it when it comes. So what's been your journey on getting there? You've obviously have some experience if you've written 4 already, but writing one on specifically on commercial real estate, what's been the journey to get there?
So yeah, I mean I think that the journey to get there all for me started when I started a blog called The Strong Professional back in 2015. And the reason why I started it was because my prior career was in software consulting, and I just recently moved to Puerto Rico on a big project down there. We helped replace their financial software system, and I was on that project as a implementation consultant for a portion of the software system that we were implementing. And so my apartment was, a stone's throw away from the beach. I was in a lucrative position, but inside I didn't feel very fulfilled. I felt lost and confused, and I started doing research on myself, like what exactly do I want to do? What I want my life to mean? And so from there, I started doing a ton of research and came across a bunch of great information. And I realized that information was hard to find. It was all kind of scattered around the internet. And so what I decided to do is to write a blog called The Strong Professional that talked about all these different concepts. And each week I would post out a blog post. And about a year into that journey, I realized that I'd already written like 30 or 40,000 words. And so I was like, well, I read an article recently that said, oh, 50,000 words is like a 200-page book. And so I was like, well, I already have 40,000 words. Why not just, add another 10,000, round it out, and I got a book. So that's how it all started. And then from there, it just became, a pattern of me just writing a couple hundred words a day. And that's the key thing, you can't eat an elephant in one bite, right? It's small, consistent action over time. And I pretty much every year on schedule, I was producing a book. And my most recent book, The Guide to Financial Freedom, was released in 2020, actually. And then I got into commercial real estate and started doing some deals. And I saw that there was a demand really for, people who were, in particular, who were starting in their business that have never really leased a property before. There were a lot of random questions that I was getting that were all very similar in what they were asking. So I thought, well, this is a good opportunity for me to write a book that just gives them the step-by-step process to get from point A to point B. So that's where the inspiration for Before You Sign That Lease came from.
Well, and it all ties in quite naturally with what you're doing online, creating a brand, having that material out there to supplement it with a book seems like those go hand in glove together. So I think that's great. I'll put a link in the description to your new book as well. But
Thanks,
yeah, I
man.
commend you on taking in a year and a half that you've been in commercial real estate. What you've accomplished has been significant, and I certainly look forward to seeing what you create going forward as well. So really appreciate you jumping on this call. I'll put a link in the description to your book and to your YouTube channel. I encourage people to go and check it out because you really do add a lot of value to the commercial real estate world. So thanks again for jumping on this call, and it's great getting to know you as well. And I look forward to continuing to chat down the road.
Thanks, Chad. Always great to be with you. So
Okay, take care, Ed.
see ya.